Wominjeka everyone, Wominjeka meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of three families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The three families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover, Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Moorabbin Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Wominjeka everyone, Wominjeka meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future, and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover, Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Mooloolik Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, They would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragaeta, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting on the 22nd of July 2025, which I now declare open at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public who have joined us tonight, as well as those watching online. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent mode during the meeting. A reminder as well to the public in the gallery that as per Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recordings are not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respect to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We now move to item 2 on the agenda, apologies and leave of absence. As all councillors are in attendance tonight, I don't believe there are any apologies or leave of absence. However, I do note that Councillor Theocharides is joining via Zoom this evening. We now move to item 3 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 24th of June 2025 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Samantha Byrne? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? No. If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is foreshadowing of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor wish to flag a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? No. I want to flag a general conflict of interest on item 9.3, compulsory acquisition of land for the widening of Overman Court, Essendon. The next item on the agenda is presentations. Councillors, I understand we have a few presentations on the recent ALGA conference. So I will start and then open to others who just want to speak to ALGA, and then I'll open it up to other presentations. So I recently attended the ALGA conference on the 25th to the 27th of June. ALGA is the national voice of local government, representing 537 councils across Australia with approximately 1,100 delegates. I found this event really beneficial. It's a unique opportunity for local government to engage directly with the federal government to develop national policy and to influence the future direction of our councils and our communities. The theme for this year's National General Assembly was National Priorities Need Local Solutions, which acknowledges that other levels of government need to collaborate with local government and local communities. I find attending the ALGA conference a valuable learning and professional development experience. It's an excellent advocacy and networking opportunity and a great chance to share ideas with fellow participants to build collaborative partnerships to further support our community. This year was also a great opportunity to hear from a range of specialist speakers and attend sessions about emergency management, housing and community infrastructure and safer roads. Thank you for that. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to ALGA? Yes, Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, there's a lot to speak about at ALGA, so I won't take all the glory. I'll just speak on 2 items that I thought will probably impact us in the very near future. But firstly, I'd also like to just say thank you to our Uyun in our support office for organising all the logistics for us to attend this conference. Because it was a big task getting us all up there. But let me just talk about just 2 things about roads and potholes and everything. And I spoke to a company up there, and they've got this magnificent road management hub transformation, and they collect this data in a single source, and they give you great guidance on road maintenance, asset planning, service optimisation, and disaster recovery. And this will help a lot of councils make very confident, informed decisions at every single stage of our maintenance. That was one of the things that really sparked my interest, and I spent quite a bit of time speaking to this group, and I've passed on that information to the CEO and to our officers to see whether it might be of an asset to us. But the one that I really was interested in was the AI technology that was involved. The presentation was about AI and interaction with the human brain, and I was struggling to see where this was going to be connecting with councils. But then we had these discussions on the side, and we had groups of people talking, and what I found very interesting, and I've written down some notes, and it's basically using AI, but currently, right now, AI is being used in a lot of boards, and the AI is like a pseudo board member. It's not to replace governance, but it's to enrich it. And the reason and how it works is, imagine a tool that listens, captures themes, surfaces tensions, and even poses questions no one would have thought of to ask. It's not science fiction, it's actually happening right now in certain boards. They have AI listening to the board meeting, and it collaborates all the information, and if it's happening at board level, I don't think it's going to be too long before some councils actually might use it in council meetings as an AI tool. I mean, like I said, it's happening at board level. I don't know when it will come down to local government, but I'm pretty sure that someone's going to bring it up into a council meeting, and we're going to have AI listening and talking and asking questions. Imagine that. Sounds interesting. But they're the two things that I was very keen, but I'm happy to leave the rest for my colleagues to talk about as well.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't add to your points, Mayor, or Councillor Sypek's points, but I'll just sort of touch on a couple of the key takeaways that I got from the conference. Obviously, there was a really strong, despite there being sort of 500 odd councils around Australia, and all sorts of issues and all sorts of responsibilities that different councils have, including some councils even sort of go directly in the housing provision space and public transport space and water space and everything. So lots of issues, but there was the key sort of issues which came from that. There was just that consistency around issues such as the strong advocacy work on sustainable funding models for local government, which was a key theme across everything, as well as housing, and really local governments looking at really any lever that they can pull to within in their remit, in their varying remits across Australia to deal with housing crisis, which was strong, and climate adaptation and emergency management were the other ones, really just strong, dominated a lot of the discussions and a lot of the presentations. Councillor Sypek's touched on the opportunities and risks of AI. That was some really good information on that as well. But certainly the local government leadership on climate change and the heavy lifting that local governments are doing in that space was a really profound theme, as well as presentations on the changing geoeconomic landscape as well was pretty important. I also spent a lot of time on the exhibition floor as well. I had some really long discussions with a number of folks, but a standout was the discussions I was having with representatives from the Heart Foundation and the work that they're also doing in terms of active transport and urban design from a wellbeing perspective, and just I guess I just thought that was quite timely with the work that's coming up with integrated transport strategy, the work that we've been doing a lot on council plan and how all of these systems within systems are coming together. So yeah, that was a highlight for sure. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't repeat a lot of what the other councillors have said. other than to reiterate that I agree with everything that has been said. I just wanted to touch on a few things that I found beneficial as a first-term councillor in going to the ALGA conference, and that included things like we heard from the Minister, the Honourable Christy McBain, Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and the Territories, and from Emergency Management. I think it was helpful to understand post-election priorities and where the federal government stands moving forward and the impact that will have on us as a local government, or at least for me as a local councillor, I found that valuable. The motion sections and the sector-led advocacy, it was pleasing to see that, disappointing that there was the need for so many emotions, but also pleasing to see that there is consistent issues across Australia, which leads to, I think, consistent opportunities for advocacy for us as a local government in Moonee Valley, but also across the board to have that bigger impact when it's coming from a national body advocating for these issues. Some of the innovation in practice, and that was through things like breakout sessions where learning about what other councils are doing to deal with things. I attended an emergency management session in particular, and it was interesting to hear what other councils are doing and how they're managing issues in their area, and how we can bring that back to our own areas. Innovation, we've talked about AI and things like that, but also, as Councillor Byrne mentioned, the exhibition floor, some of the innovation coming out of different companies and things like that, and how we can take advantage of that as a council was something I found incredibly valuable. And just meeting councillors from across the country, the networking and professional development that you get through having conversations with people was invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I too attended ALGA from the 25th to the 27th of June. I did try to put a fair bit up on my social media, so for those that followed along, thank you for the feedback. Generally speaking, it was quite positive, and I thought the community quite liked seeing what we were getting up to and realised that we were working quite hard doing a lot of different things that we've obviously heard around the table tonight. I normally go up thinking it is quite a professional development opportunity, and it definitely was this time as well. It's the second time that I've been up. But what I wanted to touch on tonight was probably the bit where I think we've improved as a council was the debate on motions. I thought we were quite active this time. I think throughout the conference I sat next to most councillors that were up there, and it was really good to see how passionate we were across various motions. The debating on motions, there was just under 200, and we almost got through all of them. And it's always really interesting to hear, particularly the difference between metro and rural, just the real pressures that happen on local government and how we can be really similar with some councils. Sometimes it's almost like Victoria v everyone else, or sometimes it's metro v rural. Like it's really interesting, the debates. There were all sorts of things covered. Airports was quite interesting. Workforce shortages, particularly in childcare, which was also interesting. Even it went down to the level of colours of roofs. So there was lots of different things debated, and I think that Moonee Valley had a quite a good voice around the auditorium. Post these debates, it was interesting because you could tell particular councils that were passionate on certain topics, and then you could go and network with them afterwards. And I know personally I learned a lot from councillors from Queensland who had quite a lot of experience in floods. We've obviously had the Maribyrnong River flood in Queensland. They've sort of been through a few times, so it was really quite interesting to speak and just get a little bit of insight from there. So I found it very beneficial to go, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on ALGA? If not, we'll move on to other presentations. I'll kick off with one. Last week on the 16th of July, I attended the Western Region Youth Forum, a collaboration among the 6 Metropolitan Western Council Youth Services. This event provided young people with the opportunity to develop leadership skills, discuss local issues and network across the region. It was a valuable opportunity to hear directly from young people about the issues most important to them and their communities. A special shout out to the Moonee Valley Youth team. Ari, Trang and Tiernan, your passion and preparation was absolutely outstanding, and it was a real pleasure to be there. Thank you, councillors. Are there any other presentations that you would like to present? Councillor Sypek?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to acknowledge one of the Milliar Award residents. His name's John O'Sullivan, or commonly known as Josh. He was my old boss at Qantas for many, many years, and I'd just like to congratulate him on being the recipient of an Order of Australia Medal for his services to Veteran Affairs. He was part of the King's Awards, and great job that he's done. He's been volunteering for over 30 years there. Even during his working time he was volunteering, so I'm very, very proud that one of our residents has got an Order of Australia Medal.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to present? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week was NAIDOC, so firstly, I certainly hope that all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander members of our community had a ripper of a week last week, and also just noting that Council hosted a flag-raising ceremony at the Incinerator Gallery on the 10th of July. The event honoured First Nations culture and community spirit, bringing together people in recognition of this year's theme, which was the next generation, strength, vision and legacy. And it was good to be there with yourself, Mayor and CEO, and also acknowledgements to Uncle Charles for the welcome, and Uncle Andrew and his views on the importance of treaty as well. Following the ceremony, attendees enjoyed cultural activities led by Yarn Strong, sister, including heartfelt reading by Annette Sachs from her children's book, Bacha and Malia, and the creative making of bush bouquets. The event was a beautiful celebration of culture, storytelling and connection. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Any other presentations? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just add a couple of the other events that took place during NAIDOC week following Councillor Philburn's discussion about the NAIDOC flag raising. We opened the week with a beautiful musical event at the Clock Tower Centre last Monday. Brett Lee, who's also known as Piritu, performed his acoustic performance that was just really beautiful. He played for about an hour, and sometimes there's just music says things in the best way possible. It was really lovely. And I had the pleasure of listening to him perform again last Friday at another event. So if you do happen to see Piritu's music around, it's well worth stopping and listening to. I also attended the Wapaya Warwick Cultural Session, which was really well attended at the Gerring Flemington Hub on the Tuesday. We were, and I know that many staff attended as well, so it was, they would have enjoyed the session as well. It was very relaxing. It was presented by Muti Muti Gunditjmara woman Jakara Egan. Wapara Warwick is a mindfulness approach that takes into account an Indigenous focus and Indigenous perspective. So we looked at a range of different elements and looked at movements to connect with the environment and embrace some mindfulness around that. So it was very relaxing, and then we had to come back to the real world. So that was NAIDOC week. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Any other presentations? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Just another few events from NAIDOC week that I'd like to mention. On the 10th of July, Councillor Theocharides and myself attended the Little Long Walk at Essendon Fields. There were 150 local community residents and staff from Essendon Fields businesses that were there raising money for the Long Walk Foundation, and also walking in solidarity with First Nations people and learning more about their culture through presentations on the day. Over the school holiday period, Moonee Valley Libraries hosted a number of sessions for children under the title Explore Wurundjeri Culture. I attended the session on July 14th at Sam Merrifield Library with my son Angus. where he was able to listen to educators from the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation through a number of stories, a number of activities. There were presentations of stone tools and artefacts, and also some tasting of bush foods, which some of the children found very interesting, especially some of the peppers, and also some stories and traditional dance and other learning of different Wurundjeri words. Finally, on Sunday night, I was privileged to attend the Clock Tower Centre, where the Clock Tower Centre presented the Australian musical play Waltzing the Willera from Hit Productions, who also produced the mega hit The Sapphires. So this was a high-energy musical celebrating love, resistance and community in 1940s Aboriginal Australia. The show featured a live band with original songs in a story full of heart, rhythm and romance. It was well received by the audience, and I would just like to also encourage members of our community to get down to the Clock Tower Centre and see many of the other performances that are due for the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other presentations? Councillor Theocrides.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few presentations to go through, and the first being the Avondale Heights Football Club 60th anniversary gala evening that I attended on Saturday evening, the 19th of July. And I think it's, 60 years is a very, very long time, and originally founded as a junior club in September 1965, where a small group of locals met at St James Church in Macy Street to establish a club for the youth of Avondale Heights, and the fact that it's been around for 60 years is quite remarkable. The first side to represent Avondale Heights in the Essendon District Football League was an under-15 team in 1966. And, obviously they've had great successes since, but some key successes are some AFL football players that have come out of that club, including Matthew Lloyd, Ken Mansfield, Peter Baxter from Footscray, and Brad Lloyd. So a great history of the last 60 years to come together and to celebrate, where they started and where they are now. But it was also really both humbling and great to see the community feel and the community spirit that goes into there, and grassroots clubs such as our local football and cricket clubs. They're really operated by volunteers that aren't paid, that do it, the love of the game, the love of the community, and the love of the sport. And they really are the backbone of our football clubs. And hearing from, some people who were made life members, as well as the president and other committee members, and just the commitment and the passion that they have for the club through, their love of being there and doing great things for our community was just really great to hear from. There were volunteers that their kids have played there, but the kids have grown up and moved on, and their parents are still there volunteering and moving the club forward. So some really beautiful stories were shared. And I just wanted to, on the last point, another key sort of standout point for me was the importance of the Avondale Heights Football Club and for the community cohesion of Avondale Heights. Pretty much every person I speak to is either majority Avondale Heights residents, and it's an opportunity where the kids come together. And I grew up in Avondale Heights, and I love the
Apologies, Councillor Theocrides, your time is up.
Sorry,
do you want to
yes.
just move on to your next presentation? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep. And the other presentation is Rosehill Park. You might have seen on Moonee Valley City Council and councillor social media posts that Rosehill Park has finally opened and has been extremely busy, particularly over the school holidays, which was perfect timing for the opening of it. I headed down there with my daughter and she absolutely loved it, and I was just blown away by how many people it has attracted. So wanted to, if anyone hasn't been down there, strongly encouraged to go down there. It's a really, really great park, but also wanted to acknowledge, whilst the park has been delivered this year, it really was the work of councillors of previous term that brought it to fruition. So thanks to previous councillors for such an asset to Avondale Heights and Keilor East, and of course municipality-wide.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Are there any other presentations?
Could I just supplement
Yeah,
Rosehill
sure.
Park?
Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm also very proud of Rosehill Park. I've been on this project since day one, and you know what, Mayor? Moonee Valley does parks pretty well, don't we? We do playgrounds pretty well, and I reckon if we could replicate the great work we've done there in all of our playgrounds, we would be a great council. So I'm hoping that over the next 4 years we can do as many playgrounds as we can, because we're doing well. We simply just doing well, and I just live around the corner from Rosehill Park, and when I go for a walk, that first day, that place was absolutely jam-packed. There was no parking spots anywhere, and luckily our parking officers weren't around, because I think we would have had some angry parents there. But I don't know what happened, but there was plenty of cars there, and even now, this week, even today, on the way to work, on the way to council here, the park was still full. Even though it was, spitting and raining a little bit, there were still kids running around, parents still running around, so it was just great to see.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Are there any other presentations? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. Whilst we're on a roll, I might also just briefly talk on Rosehill Park play space. This has probably been one of the most anticipated play spaces we've ever opened, or that I'm aware of anyway. And unfortunately, due to the liquidation of the main contractor towards the end of last year, it did take so much work by the Moonee Valley team to have 16 subcontractors be able to deliver this. So I did want to say a big thank you to Ben Harries, the Director of Service Delivery, and your team. You can stop me asking questions every couple of weeks on the playground. It was obviously such a hard project to manage, but the end result is fantastic. So there's lots of families who will enjoy that playground for many, many years to come. It was opened on Friday the 11th, which was the first Friday in the school holidays, and I was there when they were taking down the gates, and as it took them probably a couple of hours to do it, and as it was coming, there was more and more people coming, so it didn't even really need much social media attention initially, because word just got around just so quickly, and people were that excited. They were there as the fences were being pulled down. It didn't matter that it was a little bit wet on the day either. There was people going down and enjoying that slide. I would also like to say, Councillor Sypek said that he's been here from day one. The master plan for Rosehill Park was endorsed in mid-2016, which was prior to when I was on council, and in the 16 to 20 council term, it was quickly identified that a replacement like-for-like playground that was thought of in that master plan wasn't going to be adequate for our growing needs. So there was a lot of hard work done to be able to change it from what was a like-for-like playground to a regional and destination playground. So I would like to acknowledge Andrew Surace, who was on council at the time, who was also a strong voice in that. So to all of the community that has been waiting almost 10 years for this wonderful play space, please enjoy. I'm sure you will.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Any other presentations before we move on? Councillor Sypek.
Yes, Mayor. I just want to first thank you for giving me the opportunity to go down to Clifton Park, where we opened up our new pavilion. I know that you had another engagement. And
I was actually unwell, but yeah.
Well, yes.
Very unwell.
But I did step in for you, and thank you for that. I was accompanied by Councillor Byrne, Councillor Barnes and Councillor Hamish. And this pavilion has been a long time coming for the Aberfeldy Football Club, and it's probably one of our prime pavilions that we've built. And I just want to say a big thank you to one of our officers, Peter Gaffney, who was...
Just remind councillors not to mention officers' names.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just by title. Thank
All right,
you. Yeah.
I don't know what his title is, but all right.
Thank you.
One of our officers, he was instrumental in getting it done and coordinating it all and keeping it on budget and on time. So that was a great project that we've done. The Aberfeldy Football Club are very, very happy that it's now finally finished, but the history of it was sort of was quite funny, because every time we had a state election, the government that was in power would promise, a couple of $1 million to go towards the pavilion, and then the election came and there was change of government, and all of a sudden the money disappeared. And it happened actually 3 times, would you believe it? And finally, in the end, council just decided let's just build it ourselves, and we'll just use council funds to do it, and that's exactly what happened. And we've now got a great pavilion, and I look forward to the next pavilion that we build.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. We'll now move on to petitions and joint letters. The following item on the agenda is petition 6.1, opposition to council's proposed parking changes in Area 64, Moonee Ponds. Who would like to table it? Thank you, Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. A petition's been received containing 47 signatures from residents of Area 64, Moonee Ponds, opposing council's proposed parking permit changes that remove existing parking permit restrictions. The residents believe these adjustments will negatively impact the current parking situation, and instead request that council consider enforcing stricter restrictions and ensure better enforcement of those restrictions. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.5, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, do we have any other petitions or joint letters? If not, we've now come to public question time, and we have received 3 questions this evening. The first 2 questions excuse me, are from David Uber, who is joining us this evening. David, can you please ask your first pre-submitted question just at the lectern there? Is David not in attendance? No? Okay. I will read his question for him. The first one reads, MV 2040 commits Moonee Valley to being a connected city with accessible, sustainable and active transport options, but the integrated transport strategy now looks to be delayed until 2026 to 27 or even 2027 to 28, if reading the dots correctly on the council plan refresh. What concrete steps will councillors take to accelerate its development, consultation and adoption? And will council commit to publishing a clear public timeline so the community can track progress and hold council accountable? Thank you, David. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sweet, to respond.
Thank you, David. Through the Mayor, as part of the draft 2024-25 Council Plan initiatives that are to be considered by Council this evening, Council officers are currently finalising the Integrated Transport Strategy discussion paper to inform the upcoming community consultation and engagement process, scheduled to commence in late August 2025. The feedback received on the discussion paper will assist the development of the integrated transport strategy, which is planned for presentation to Council in 2026. The integrated transport strategy is an initiative included in the Council plan, and as such, there will be quarterly updates to the community on this matter as part of that reporting process. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. David's second question reads, the last integrated transport plan is from 2008 and the cycling and walking strategy hasn't been updated since 2012, despite Council noting its completion at the start of last year. Why is Council comfortable waiting years for a new framework to guide transport investment? and what interim actions will be taken and made public to prioritise safer, more accessible walking, cycling and low emissions transport now? Thank you, David. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sweet, to respond.
Thank you, David. Through the Mayor, the upcoming integrated transport strategy will replace several previous transport-related strategies, including the Transport Safety Strategy 2016 to 2026. In the interim, the MV 2040 Community Vision and Strategy and associated documents to be considered by Council this evening will guide, among other things, the ongoing development and delivery of relevant transport-related initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The final question is from Stephen Holman, who is joining us this evening. Stephen, please ask your pre-submitted question. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you. At the Council meeting on 6th of June 2023, when Council was considering the proposed redevelopment of the nursery corner, it ruled that there would be no changes to existing parking facilities at the Strathmore Men's Shed, and that vehicles could continue to be parked on the grassed area adjacent to the track leading from Mascoma Street to the shed. Prior to recent Greening Victoria landscaping works being undertaken adjacent to the shed access track, a council officer met with representatives of the shed and assured us that the landscaping works would not interfere with the council car parking resolution. Planting works have now been completed and many of the plants are so close to the edge of the access track that it is no longer possible to park a vehicle at right angles to the access track. Is this situation an intentional disregard of the resolution of the council or an oversight of council officers to instruct the landscaping contractors of the car parking resolution? And I don't know if you can see that photo. I did send it through, but I don't think it got to you. You can see my vehicle is almost touching the plants there and is halfway across the track at the rear. So obviously we cannot park on adjacent to the track anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sweet, to respond.
Thank you, Stephen, for your question. Through the Mayor, the recent planting works near the Strathmore Men's Shed did not alter any formal parking areas and were limited to a grass section beneath existing trees. Council officers met on site with Men's Shed representatives on 2 occasions prior to the planting occurring to discuss the proposed works and ensure a buffer was retained along the access track. The intent was to balance continued parking access with broader environmental and safety concerns, including tree root protection, erosion, and accessibility. This is not a case of intentional disregard or oversight, but rather an effort to manage competing community needs within the site constraints. Officers remain committed to working with stakeholders and are engaging relevant teams to explore longer-term solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next item on the agenda is reports from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports as delegates? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'm conscious that we've had a lot of presentations and reports tonight, so I'll just keep this brief. I just wanted to report back on my attendance at the Municipal Association of Victoria Regional meeting for Metro West on Tuesday the 8th of July, so 2 weeks ago. We're in the region with 5 other councils, and so we meet a couple of times a year to discuss various advocacy programs and projects of the MAV. And I just wanted to mention that at this most recent meeting, a couple of points were made. The MAV at the moment is making a real effort to make sure that it audits and reports back to councils its activities on the motions that members bring to the state councils. Councillor Samantha Byrne was talking earlier about the ALGA motions, and it's something that councils do. We get together and we move motions, but sometimes there isn't a lot of follow-up on that. And so the MAV at the moment is really making an effort to follow through and report back. The other thing that was spoken about that was of great interest to me was the work that the MAV is doing currently on homelessness. They've undertaken a survey across the sector and found that 86% of Victorian councils report that homelessness is getting worse, with 93% of survey respondents recognising that councils play a role, but that local government has no access to state or Commonwealth funds. And so the MAV is putting forward a program of advocacy and awareness building and work with council officers to work out what local government can do about the increase in homelessness.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillors like to report back as delegates? If not, Councillor Theocrides.
Thank you, Mayor. So on Friday the 11th of July, I attended the Western Melbourne Tourism Incorporated General Meeting to approve the 2025-26 budget. For those that don't know about that board, it's basically an urban regional tourism organisation that's incorporated to develop a strong and competitive tourism sector in Melbourne's west, which is a real gap. There's a lot of hype and tourism about regional Victorian, regional suburbs, but not really when it comes to Melbourne's west. So the municipal areas and other councils that are involved and have delegates attend and delegates on the board come from Ringbank, Hobsons Bay, Maribyrnong, Melton, obviously Moonee Valley and the Wyndham councils. And so essentially the main aim is to increase recognition and contribution and growth of visitors to the Melbourne's west in all those council areas. So just to the 2025-26 budget was approved and very, very small deficit of only $800, which is 0.06% variance, which is very, very small. They're doing extremely well in terms of that. There is one of the major projects is that the Western Melbourne Tourism Board, or Western Melbourne Tourism, received a grant from the Victorian government, was for a project called the Mustay West Side. And it's essentially a customised digital platform and mobile app that's that would offer curated information and experiences tailored to cultural preferences. This particular project is tailored to Indian visitors to the Western Suburbs region. However, the great thing about this is that the digital platform and the mobile app can be replicated for other cultures. So whilst this is specific to the Indian culture and visitors to Melbourne, it can be replicated for disability uses, disability types, groups, community, different cultures. So it's really exciting, and it's progressing really well. There's new software that's being implemented that's improving search results. There's a web interface. The web interface is nearing completion. There's positive engagement from Visit Victoria, and it's great because where there's no sort of one app or Councillor Slypeck was talking about AI. It helps generate places to go that are tailored to the culture. So in this case, it's visitors from India, and pulls up different search results of restaurants and events and places of interest that might be sort of tailored for that group of people. So that's why it's really exciting for the board, and once it gets implemented. So that's progressing really well. They're also working on the refresh of the website, and we'll be going live with the marketing plan. So it's really good for local economy and local small businesses of all the councils, municipalities that I mentioned. So some exciting things in the tourist area coming up.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Any other reports from delegates? If not, we'll now move on to item 9, reports. The first report is item 9.1, MV/240/2024 at 1088 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Phil Byrne, thank you. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This application is for a 5-storey development on Mount Alexander Road, just south of Glass Street, for a medical centre. I note that there were no objections from council officers or from community members, and I think it's a really suitable development for that area. I think it'd be a great addition to the community. It's got good accessibility from public transport, and in that kind of growth corridor along Mount Alexander Road, I'm very happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Philbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. I've looked at this proposal really in depth, and yeah, my mic's on here. I've been a 50-50 about this because even though the officers recommended to grant a permit, but they said it provided a reasonable amount of compliance to the planning scheme, and that's where I felt a bit uncomfortable. If they said it complies, I would have been happy, but because it's not fully compliant, I sort of struggle with it because it is 5 stories and it is a funny shaped block. But also the reduction in parking. Parking is a premium on Mount Alexander Road. And if you're going to build a 5-storey building, you should provide the parking for a 5-storey building and not to ask for a reduction, because all I can see, we could be setting a precedent here if we allow this to go through, because then everyone along Mount Alexander Road is going to want a reduction in parking. And I can see this becoming a bit of a dominoes effect. So that's why I've decided that I cannot support this application because of that reason.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I am happy to support the officer's recommendation on this on this occasion and on this planning application. I feel like it is an appropriate development for the North Essendon area. I think any medical facilities are a good thing for our local community. I think the fact that we've had no objections from the community is a strong point in favour of the project, and it is close to a number of different public transport options. There's a tram stop right out the front, there's bus routes in the area, and it is a very short distance from the train station as well. So I do think that it is a good use of the site, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Isa?
I'm sorry, Mayor. Councillor Theocrides has lost sound. I was just wondering if we might be able to pause for a moment while we just sort that out.
Yeah, we'll call an adjournment. It's 7:18. We'll be back at 7:23. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It's 7:24 p.m. and we will resume the meeting. We're currently considering report 9.1 MV/240/2024 at 1088 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon. We seem to have lost some audio. Councillor Theocharides has asked if Councillor Jones can please sort of just summarise your speaking to the motion, please. Thanks,
Happy to, Mayor.
Jones.
And I'll just, if I can get a thumbs up from Councillor Theocharides to make sure she can hear me this time. Excellent. So I did briefly mention that I am happy to support the officer's recommendation in item 9.1. I feel like this is a good use of the site in the North Essendon area for a multi-storey medical centre. I feel like the fact that there were no objections from the community is a good sign. I think the car parking reductions are balanced by the location being close to a number of sustainable public transport options, tram, bus, and the proximity to Essendon Station. So for that reason, I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't disagree with comments made with respect to the appropriate use and built form of the application. I am probably concerned about the car parking, not that I feel the need for every application to supply the degree of car parks that are often required of it, and particularly one that's, as has been mentioned, close to public transport. I think it's more that the use of this particular site is for people who are of some degree potentially of unwellness and probably are likely to deal with mobility issues more than the general population. And I think given the intended use of the site, there's a need for us to be more cognisant of easy car parking, particularly disability car parking. And I know that the disability car parking will be addressed at the building permit stage. But I think, as someone who's visited a lot of medical centres over the last 9 months, with people with mobility issues, I'm just very cognisant of the need for, visiting medical centres is quite stressful for people who are going, and I think making sure that transport and access to transport isn't an additional stress that people face is quite important. I'm probably a bit hesitant about the stacker arrangement for this particular use of the site as well. So I'll probably not support this application on those grounds. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Theocharides.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to follow on from Councillor Isa and state that I probably won't support it as well. Not because I don't think it's a great development. I think a 5-storey building for the purposes of a medical centre is fantastic. And while, there's the Disability Discrimination Act compliance that's absolutely, comes into play with the building permit process, councillors don't have oversight to what that will actually look like. And so being someone that's always spoken about inclusion and disability inclusion and how passionate I am about that, I don't feel comfortable not having any sort of details with regards to that or any oversight. And following on from Councillor Isa, whilst there are transport options as have my councillor colleagues have mentioned, I too have been to my share of medical appointments, both for myself and being a carer, and it can be quite stressful for carers travelling with people with disabilities and elderly and so forth. And I'm not comfortable that aspect of it, knowing how difficult it is. And I've heard many stories from residents with regards to even council events that that they've not been able to attend because both the carer and the person that they're caring for have got mobility issues. So it's not, a matter of dropping off and sort of leaving, and parking within the facilities is very needed, and especially for a 5-storey building where it's purely for medical. It's a medical centre. Those sorts of purposes, there will be lots of traffic going through in terms of foot traffic and people attending. And the fact that there are no objections, yes, it's comfortable. I'm comfortable with that if it was just sort of a local thing, but being a 5-storey building, it will attract people from different suburbs.
Councillor Theocrides, you've got 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Mayor. It will attract people from other municipalities and other suburbs that haven't had a chance to have a look at this. So from that perspective, I don't think I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you. I will. Look, I've listened to the debate around the table in regards, it's mainly been around the car parking. It seems to be the main issue. And I think it was touched on that there will be a specific condition about the DDA parking that, it'll get picked up in the building permit process. So we know that that's going to occur. And for me, there's no way I can say no to what looks like a very good application, which is going to service so much of our growing community based on something that's going to be fixed at the next step anyway. One thing that's really hard, I find, whenever I've had to either go into medical appointments or take family to medical appointments, is leaving the municipality, whether it's up Flemington Road or wherever it is. You've got to go so far sometimes to see people, and how amazing is it that there's someone who wants to produce a facility that's going to have more medical rooms in Moonee Valley. And yes, the parking may not look perfect at the moment and it might not quite be up to standard, but are we really going to say no to this application? I can't see how the negatives outweigh the positive for this particular case. We know what's coming to Keilor Road. We know the increase in population that's coming. We know the increased demand that is going to be needed for these services. So I will be supporting the motion that was moved today.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor Isa?
Could I just ask a point of clarification,
Sure.
please, Mayor? Through you, a comment was just made that the problem will be fixed at the building permit stage. I talked about the reduction from 32 car parks to 16 car parks. Could I just have a point of clarification, please, that gap, there's no intention, or that the building permit won't address the gap between the 16 and 32 car parks?
Yep. Through the CEO, would you like to ask her?
I would need the manager city development to answer that question.
Manager of City
Thank you.
Development.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Isa is correct. There's no specific condition in the report recommending that more parking be provided. I think the discussions previously have been about the DDA parking, and it's that component that would potentially be picked up by a private building surveyor. It's their responsibility to make sure that it complies with those requirements.
Thank you, Manager of City Development. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the... Oh, sorry, right of reply. Thank you. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like a right of reply?
I would, thank you, given there was a bit of disagreement on this one, or discussion. I take the point, kind of the concerns from councillors about the parking. The current application does provide for parking, but not as much as we would expect for, kind of pro forma residential development. I think it's, on the balance of things, it provides enough parking for staff who will be there all day, And the section of Mount Alexander Road that it's along, as Councillor Jones mentioned, is really well serviced by other transport methods, but also has about a bay of 2-hour parking spots. There's about 20 of them that are turn over very frequently and are often, they're sort of far enough away from the shops that they're often sitting empty at the moment. So I do think it's kind of uniquely positioned that unlike other areas on Mount Road, there is a suitable amount of street parking for patients, I suppose, or visitors to the clinic. I think the reality is if we wanted a parking lot with a development like this, we just wouldn't get this development in Moonee Valley. As Councillor Samantha Byrne says, that means going outside the municipality for this kind of care. So I think it's a real asset. I understand the concern, but I feel that it's been suitably addressed through the parking provided, the other means of getting to the facility, and the street parking. I suppose the other point of disagreement, nearly out of time, was the reasonable compliance, and I feel like that's the case with all planning matters. They only have to be, reasonably compliant. You can't I'm worried that we're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and that means that we don't get a medical centre in a really growing part of our municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Adams, Councillor Jones. All those against? That's Councillor John Barnes, Councillor Isaac, Councillor Sypek. I declare, Councillor Theocrides. I declare that motion carried. The next report is item 9.2, Draft Moonee Valley MV 2040 Refresh, Council Plan 2025 to 2029, Asset Plan 2025 to 2035, and Financial Plan 2025 to 35. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the officer's recommendation with some amendments.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. The amendments are that Council resolves to adopt the following draft plans for the purpose of public exhibition and invite public feedback for the period between 25th of July and the 29th of August 2025. On one, the draft MV 2040 Community Vision and Strategy, updated 2025, brackets attachment 1. 2, draft council plan 2025 to 29, brackets incorporating the municipal public health plan and disability action plan, brackets attachment 2, with the following changes. Paragraph 1, reword strategy 5.2 to read, continue to recognise the value of volunteering in our community and support volunteers across the municipality by building capacity and connections while increasing and enhancing volunteering opportunities at council. Paragraph 2, at strategic objective 13, under the column how will we track progress, add the words and flooding to the second point to read reduced community vulnerability to heat and flooding. Paragraph 3, remove the word considering from strategy 13.2 to read review and continue to deliver programs through the Community Climate Emission Reduction Reserve, including targets for solar uptake. Paragraph 4, reword strategy 14.2 to read use flood modelling to mitigate the impacts of climate change on drainage networks through potential planning changes and capital works delivery. Paragraph 5, include a reference to the Maribyrnong River strategy. I'll start that one again. Paragraph 5, include a reference to the Maribyrnong River in strategy 14.4 to read continue to support the health, of waterways, including by working with partners to support their efforts to naturalise the Moonee Ponds Creek, advocate for the naturalisation of Steel Creek, and lead Maribyrnong River improvements. Paragraph 6, add reference to homelessness in Strategy 16.1 to read, prepare initiatives to ensure that residential development is directed to appropriate locations to meet our future population growth and housing needs, focusing on activity centres and areas with good access to public transport, and working with councils, and so I'll start that line again, and working within council's role to increase affordable and social housing and address homelessness. Paragraph 7, add reference to cost of living relief in Strategy 23.3 to read, refresh and implement council's financial management policy, including responding to economic challenges and cost of living pressures. Point 3, draft annual plan 2025-26, brackets attachment 3, with the following changes. Paragraph 1, add reference to pedestrian crossings in Year 1 Initiative 10.2.1 to read, continue advocacy for safer intersections and pedestrian crossings on Mount Alexander Road. Paragraph 2, add Year 1 Initiative for Strategy 13.1 to read, work with Maribyrnong City Council, Emergency Services and Melbourne Water on community preparedness initiatives and support Melbourne Water and stakeholders on the Maribyrnong River catchment flood mitigation study. Paragraph 3, add a Year 1 Initiative 13.2.3 to read, report to Council with a methodology and plan to implement an exemption from planning permit requirements for visible solar energy systems in the heritage overlay to facilitate greater provision of on-site renewable energy in heritage places where appropriate. Point 4 and 5, I'll take those as they are on the screen. Paragraph 1 under point 5, note that Council commits to delivering a balanced budget each year from 2026 to 27 to 2034 to 35. Paragraph 2, reflect this commitment in the funding position table, brackets page 33. Paragraph B, request that an accessible and simple summary of the draft council plan be prepared and shared with community for the purpose of clear and engaging communication during the public exhibition and consultation period. Paragraph C, allow for minor editing to the draft council plan and draft annual plan as required, and to give effect to these changes. And paragraph D, as remains on the screen. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like a little sip of water before you speak?
Like a 10-minute break.
Long motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, man. Firstly, I'd just like to thank and acknowledge all of the community members who've contributed to these important processes, and I'm certainly looking forward to any further contributions the community's got in the coming weeks on these this important strategy. I also wish to thank and acknowledge council officers and councillor colleagues on all of their work taken to date to get us to the point where we are now. Council is required under the Local Government Act to adopt the plans by October this year, and the exhibition of these plans ensures that the plans adequately reflect community aspirations. And this process strengthens transparency, it builds trust and supports Council's abilities to meet its obligations. To the points I raised in the amendment, I see these as really positive municipal-wide additions to the draft. They're relatively minor, yet they're very important changes that build on the great work that's been done on these plans to date. So to the draft council plan, the edits highlight the desire to strengthen support and build capacity for volunteers. It strengthens responses to climate risk. It flags the important work to continue improving our waterways. It notes council's desire to contribute in any way within our remit to address homelessness and the cost of living pressures. With respect to the annual plan changes, the proposed amendments seek to strengthen advocacy for safe intersections and pedestrian crossings along Mount Alexander Road. And we all know that that is such a key barrier to movement throughout Moonee Valley, which is only going to increase with its challenges as we continue to increase densities along the length of Mount Alexander Road. The annual plan also picks up on the important work being undertaken with our neighbours and emergency service around community preparedness for flooding and emergencies within the Maribyrnong River catchment, and also the work that's being undertaken on the Maribyrnong River catchment mitigation strategy. And finally, the changes to the annual plan seek to start the process of reviewing parts of Moonee Valley which are within the heritage overlay to determine areas where permit requirements could be removed for solar panels, ultimately ensuring that more residents can save money on bills, that we can reduce some red tape at council, and that we can also start to move the dial more significantly on reaching our sustainability and climate and emissions goals. And finally, in relation to the financial plan, the amendment proposes that council's commitment to achieve a balanced future budgets is appropriately represented within the plan itself. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to echo Councillor Phil Byrne's thanks to colleagues and to officers for all of their really hard work on putting these plans together. It's a huge piece of work, and they're kind of pretty big documents that they're putting out to the community for consultation, and that started before we even got elected, and they've been working really diligently on since. So my thanks to everyone involved in that process. On the council plan, that's the kind of the strategic, as Councillor Phil Byrne said, needs to be adopted by October, and is us as a councillor group coming together, setting the strategic directions and objective for this term. Sort of, you know, not as exciting as, it's not throwing out things that you might see in the budget of kind of, these are the things we're going to tick off. It's us saying that everything we do over the next 4 years, this is what will guide it. This is how we will be spending, you know, your ratepayer money in line with these strategies and these principles, and this is the guiding document. And so it's been pretty big, and getting 9 people together to agree on that, or work together on that, was big, but I think we've landed in a really great spot. The amendments I'm happy to support. I think that while it looks lengthy in this kind of the scope of the document and the work we've done, I think there's some sort of changes and small words that we just wanted, you know, I think are appropriate to be captured at this level. What that looks like in terms of our individual initiatives, you know, that will continue to be discussed year on year, and that will go out to the community as well. But this is sort of, yeah, high level where we're heading, and I'm so pleased that it's got such a big focus on environmental sustainability. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we can make people in the community feel more connected and engaged, what we can do at kind of local government to build that sense of community and pride that we've got in Moonee Valley. And we've added a 6th theme, as well as objectives and directions. There are themes. which are in MV 2040, we've added an additional one of trusted, which really speaks to how we want the community to engage with
Councillor,
us.
you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. We want it to be a sort of two-way conversation. We want it to be as open as possible, and so I'm really pleased to see that in there. That's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Theocrides.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to touch on some points that I'm very much in support of, including which Councillor Burns has included. And in particular, it's the inclusion of flooding. The mention of flooding in terms of Objective 13, reduce community vulnerability to heat and flooding. I think Councillor Samantha Burns touched on earlier on in the meeting regarding the floods of 2022 that were quite devastating for not only Moonee Valley residents, but also Maribyrnong City Council residents. And we need to keep, whilst it was 3 years ago, we need to keep reminding us that it's not an issue that's gone away. Funding periods and flooding mitigation and things like that take a lot longer to deal with, and there are residents that are still impacted by that. So the inclusion of flooding, as well as the inclusion of community preparedness, including emergency preparedness, it's an extremely important thing to be looking at and focusing on in the next 4 years, because, as I said, just because people may have moved into their houses and it may look like and appear from the outside that we've recovered, there are many residents that just haven't, and the preparedness there is just not where it needs to be. So I'm pleased to see that inclusion, and also the whole reason why we're seeing the flooding that's more than what we've seen before in modelling and things like that.
Councillor, you have 30 seconds left.
Thanks. More than what we've seen in modelling and so forth, it really speaks to the climate change that we as a council have acknowledged, and looking at the including the Maribyrnong River, and looking at the health of Maribyrnong River, and really harnessing the advantage that we've got of Maribyrnong River wrapping around pretty much our whole municipality. It's a huge advantage to us.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Sorry, your time is up. Would you like an extension of 15 seconds?
Yeah, yes please, yeah. It's a huge advantage that we have with the scope and the fact that it wraps around our whole municipality, and the benefits that it can provide from a climate change perspective in looking at the health of it. So yes, very happy to see that in. And also the mention of volunteers. I mentioned earlier that volunteers at Avondale Heights Football Club are the backbone of the football club, just like any other community group. I'm always blown away by just the amount of work that they do. So I'm very pleased to see that.
Apologies, your time is up.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to Councillor Burns' motion, if possible.
Yes, what is your amendment?
Specifically under point 3 related to the draft annual plan, I'd like to make a couple of amendments. So I'd like to add a new point 1 that's at strategic objective 8.3. Add design and commence construction of a youth park and play space at Boeing Reserve as a Year 1 initiative, which would be 8.3.3, under Thriving, to bring alignment between the annual plan and the adopted budget for 2025-26. Renumber accordingly points 2, 3 and 4, and also add a point 5, edit Year 1 Initiative 20.3.1 in the annual plan to read, complete construction of the Lincolnville Kindergarten, progress construction of the Coronation Kindergarten and continue planning for the Airport West Kindergarten.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I do support everything that's been said to date, but I would like to move these amendments. As mentioned in the new point 1, we've already identified design and commence construction of youth park and play space at Boeing Reserve in our budget. We have approved funding in year 1 for that, and we have called it an initiative on page 16 of the approved budget. So I think it makes sense to bring that into alignment with the annual plan, and also as a council we have a strong focus on early childhood education, and as part of the Building Blocks project I think it's important to acknowledge the Airport West Kindergarten as well, given that the continued planning for that in year 1 of our council plan, so I think it's worth acknowledging in the annual plan as well. I won't speak to anything else other than to agree with everything that everyone else has said on other points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll spend my time just touching on the slight change for point 5, which was effectively adding in the continue of the planning of the Airport West Kindergarten. Whilst this is touched on, I think the reason why it's important to ensure that this is down as an annual initiative is because we're not operating the Airport West Kindergarten from the start of 2026. And I think it's really important to highlight to the community the work that's being undertaken as to why all the kids in Airport West can't go to the Airport West Kindergarten for that first half of the year whilst the planning's being undertaken for what will be the construction of the new really important space. This is a really significant project for the people of Airport West, and it's been really difficult for those with children, especially when they were expecting for their children to be going there. So there might be questions that are asked at the start of next year when there's not necessarily cranes on site so early as to why their kids couldn't be going there, and if we can refer them back to where we are with our initiatives and just sort of be able to sort of step through to say, look, there's still work going on here. It's really important that we continue this planning to be able to refurbish and expand the centre. I think that it's an important one. I'm also supportive of the Boeing Reserve words as well. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I won't be supporting the amendment, although I support, obviously, both the projects. Look, the budget and the council plan documents are really different documents. The council plan and the annual plan have a specific purpose, and we're talking here about 2 amendments to the annual plan, which are then the 2 amendments to include some initiatives. It's been quite a challenge for us as councillors to get our heads around what these initiatives actually mean, but they're not the same as items in a budget. What they are, in fact, are just some a small selection of things that we are effectively committing the organisation to absolutely deliver unless we put some caveats and conditions around that otherwise. So it's not a list to inform our community of everything we're doing, and it's not a list of things that are of everything in our budget. It is our budget identifies things that we hope to achieve. The council plan annual initiatives are things that we are committing to do, and they are very different things. So with respect to the Boeing Youth Park and play space, we've put some money in for the design, And we're hoping there may be an element of commencement to that, but we can't guarantee that, and we haven't made any decisions for any funding that might be needed, in fact, to progress any tenders or commence any work there. So while we're able to hope that we do it in a budget, we can't necessarily commit we do it as an initiative to the council plan. It doesn't mean that we're not trying to do it, and it doesn't mean that we're not intending to do it. It's just an understanding of what this document is. And I think that it's really important that we all understand what the document is and communicate that really clearly to our community. With respect to the kindergarten, there's a lot of information on our website about Airport West Kindergarten. We don't need to use the list of initiatives in our council plan to try to communicate what is better communicated to our community through the website, which clearly states the plan and the schedule of planning and building for that exciting project at Airport West, which is absolutely going ahead because it's state government money that Ben Carroll and our
Councillor, you've got 30 seconds left.
Our wonderful MP for the area has helped us secure, along with Danny Pearson, and we are going to be delivering that. So I anticipate that will be a year 2 initiative rather than sort of subsumed as a year 1 initiative. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Theocrides.
Thank you, Mayor. I also don't think I'll be supporting the amendments. Just following on from Councillor Isa and having a strategic and executive background, the council plan for me is really a document that sets our strategic direction over the next 4 years. And usually when you set a strategy and a strategic direction, it's an overall umbrella document. And in this particular document, we've listed our objectives as a council, and the initiatives are really a broad statement on how we're going to achieve those objectives. And the budget is really a more detailed annual assessment in terms of incorporating actuals and estimations of project costings and things like that. And it's really an opportunity, the budget is really an opportunity to assess our financial needs in order to deliver projects. So including specific projects in a strategic document, I think is a bit risky because it's, that's not the place where we assess, if we really have the finances to deliver the projects. So it's not that I don't support a kindergarten in Airport West. It's not that I don't support Boeing Reserve Youth Play Space. It's that I don't feel that it's quite the right space to discuss those projects when we're looking at strategic overview. And as Councillor Isa said, we have Victorian State Government funding for the Airport West Kindergarten. It's going ahead. Grant agreements have very, very tight criteria in terms of delivering on promises and delivering on projects. And in terms of bringing it forward...
Councillor, you've got 30 seconds left.
Thank you. In terms of bringing it forward from a second-year initiative, which is where it's listed at the moment, I'm reticent to do that because we don't have council officers' input in terms of if that can be actually completed in first year, juggling capacity and resources for other projects as well. So yeah, that's basically why I won't be supporting these two.
Thank you.
These amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had time to think about these amendments, and I think they're actually both quite good. Thank you, Councillor Byrne, and thank you, Councillor Jones, for bringing up these extra comments to to this item. I just need to sort of maybe bring this back into perspective. This is not the final decision. This is just a draft that's going out to the community. So I'd rather give the community more information than to withhold these amendments. If we give them this extra information, the community can decide. The community will give us feedback on this. This is what we do. This is what our job is to listen to the community. And the more information we can give them, the more comfortable I feel. So I'm more than happy to support these two amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Cosgrove.
Thanks, Mayor. Just briefly, probably a bit different to Councillor Sypek. I don't quite feel I've had time to think over just these last two additions. So it sort of speaks to a behind-the-scenes process we have of how we communicate these things with each other, and I just only sort of became aware of them today, and I'm a little bit. I'm not sure how actionable they are. We could put them out to community consultation and get feedback from officers, but I know that we're designing it's not against either of the projects. It's whether it's the appropriate place to have them and whether they are actionable. I'm just not sure, and we haven't had the time to. I haven't had the time to think over it, given when the information was provided, unfortunately. So I'm a little bit reticent just to support this latest amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Jones, would you like a right of reply?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. I did flag with Council Laws in an email a couple of weeks ago that I would potentially be moving this amendment at this meeting after discussions about the council plan and annual plan. And also I would like to flag that there are other specific items in the initiative initiatives that speak to particular projects. I feel that if we've defined this as an initiative in one document, it would make sense specifically with Boeing Reserve to mention it in our annual plan as well, and also with regards to the Airport West Kindergarten. I think that reassuring the community of our focus on planning in the initial first year is not a big amendment to make, and would reassure the community, as Councillor Samantha Byrne mentioned, long term to understand that building blocks project is happening and that we are continuing to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll now put that to the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Hamish Jones, Councillor Sypek. All those against? Councillor John Barnes, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Adams. I declare that... Councillor Theocrides. I declare that amendment lost. We'll now revert back to the substantive, and we've had the mover of the motion and the seconder, Councillors Byrne and Cosgrove speak, Phil Byrne and Councillor Cosgrove speak, as well as Councillor Theocrides. Councillor Jones, you had the call when you made the amendment. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst I'm obviously disappointed that the amendment was lost, I will be supporting this motion in its current form. I think it is important that we put this out to the community for discussion. I would reinforce that it is a draft and there are still opportunities for us as councillors to make changes based on community feedback, and I will be strongly encouraging members of Airport Ward and across Moonee Valley to make sure that they do participate in that feedback process.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly. I think just picking up on a couple of views of my colleagues around the fact that we're going out on essentially a consultation piece, which is very, very true. But nonetheless, it's important to get strategy right, and the points around listening to the community. That's I want to make it really clear that I feel that that's exactly what we've done. They've said to us loud and clear that they want a lot more action when it comes to climate risk, and they want to move the dial on emissions and all of the other things which are worth mentioning. And I think when you pull together amendments like this, you end up sort of talking about the amendments, but you lose sight of the really good work that's in the main document. So so I think that whilst we've been talking around these edits and tweaks, it really is important that we don't lose sight of all of that effort that we've done, which was picking up on that community input, and packaging that with the excellent support of officers into these plans. So I just want to mention that. And I think in terms of the council plan, it's just also important just to think of where things will be at in 4 to 5 years' time. We're going to have another two floods of the Maribyrnong. Hope not, but it certainly is important.
Councillor, you have 25 seconds left.
That really strategic view going forward. And I just encourage all of the community to look at the drafts and put a submission in. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Barnes, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Jones, Councillor Adams. All those against? That's Councillor Samantha Byrne and Councillor Sypek. I declare that motion carried. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Councillor Theocrides, apologies. You had your hand up to support the motion?
To support the motion, that's correct.
Thank you for that. I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Before moving on to the next item, 9.3, compulsory acquisition of land for the widening of Overman Court, Essendon, I would like to declare that I have a conflict of interest on the matter as a family member owns a property in the proximity of the subject site. I will now temporarily vacate the chair, and Deputy Mayor Councillor Cosgrove will take the chair. Thank you.
Just wait for the Mayor to have left. So councillors, the next report is item 9.3, compulsory acquisition of land for the widening of Overman Court, Essendon. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Jones?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Will anyone second Councillor Jones's motion? Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thank you. The advice is pretty clear in terms of risk on Overman Court there. So for the benefit of those watching along at home, the issue here is regarding the widening of Overman Court to have improve access for emergency vehicles. There's currently issues around the width of the street and that happening, and I think the advice is pretty clear that the street needs to be widened. Public safety is, I think, a non-negotiable part of our responsibility as a council, and I support this action because it will increase community safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thanks, Deputy Mayor. Nothing more to really add from Councillor Jones. I mean, although there's just always just a little bit of, what's happened in the past that's got us to this point where we have to acquire land to get us out of a pickle from previous decisions. But it's the actions, required for public safety, and it'll have my support. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I'll ask the Mayor to come back in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove, for chairing the last item. The next report is item 9.4, adoption of revised statutory planning delegation policy. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with the following amendment. Let's wait for that to come on screen. And the amendment is that Council resolves to adopt the revised statutory planning delegation policy (attachment 1) with the following amendments. Point 1, add a new point C under section 4.1.2 that states the application seeks to allow, increase or renew the number of electronic gaming machines. Point 2, change references in the policy to 15 eligible objections to be replaced by 10 eligible objections. Point 3, remove the last dot point under section 4.1.2 that states is or is likely to be of a major public interest, controversial or politically sensitive. 4, amend paragraph 2 of section 4.3 to state this request can be made at any time prior to the decision being made. The councillor making the request must lodge a prescribed call-up form co-signed by a minimum of 2 additional councillors to the manager, city development, and include the reasons justifying why the broader interest of the community is served by the proposal being considered by the council. 5, include a line in section 4.4 that requires officers to immediately notify councillors when a planning permit application receives 10 eligible objections, in addition to the weekly status report. At 6, remove the first dot point under section 6, definition of major project that states a value of 15 million or more. At 7, add a requirement in 5.4.2 for consultation meetings to be arranged promptly, conducted efficiently and attended by the councillor requesting the consultation meeting. And at 8, update 5.1 of the policy to add the words objectors will continue to have the opportunity to raise their concerns directly with councillors or through the existing public forum process. And just paragraphs B, C and D as read on the screen. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Philburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. So the delegation in planning matters plays a fundamental role in how councils administer land use planning. It establishes clear roles for both council officers and councillors. I generally support the revised delegations policy, and I agree that it responds well to the findings of IBAC's Operation Sandon, previous council audits, the updated legislation and planning scheme changes, and the emphasis on streamlined decision making. And it is these findings that I've also proposed in the amendments to the officer's recommendation. However, in addition to these findings, I'd also, as a general rule, prefer to see fewer items coming up to council, and I feel strongly that our role is really focused at that strategic land use planning level rather than the individual decision of whether a proposals meet the planning scheme. And we add much greater value when our time and effort is focused on things like our housing strategy, heritage overlays, neighbourhood character overlays, planning scheme amendments, and all of that terrific and incredibly important strategic work. And also, when matters come to council, I think it's really important that we understand that decision-making time on that matter will blow out quite significantly in most cases. It also introduces a risk at VCAT for a failure to determine within the statutory timeframe. That comes as a cost to council, an administration cost to council, and it also comes as cost and uncertainty to proponents as well. And potentially proponents could be developers that could easily deal with that cost, but many of them potentially aren't as well. So that cost and uncertainty. So it's very important that when we have these delegation policies, it's very clear as to what comes through the gate and what doesn't. And it's with that in mind that I've proposed some of the changes that I have is around that clarity. So to the points in the amendment, so it's proposed to add a requirement for, and I acknowledge the hypocrisy of saying I want fewer things coming to council by adding an extra thing to come to council, but just to add that requirement for applications involving electronic gaming machines to come to council, just given the level of community interest and harm associated with that land use, it just seems as one that ought to be on the list when we look at the other things that are on the list. The amendment also proposes to keep the status quo with the number of eligible objections to 10 rather than 15 throughout the document. And I think to look at the definition of eligible objection, I'm comfortable with that, even though that's potentially tightening up things and maybe having a few more come to council. I think that the overall quantum is not likely to be much. It's also proposed that the officer's decision on whether an item is or is likely to be of major public policy interest or controversy or politically sensitive to be removed, and that's really just based on the other criteria that are within that section of the the policy, and I'll just quickly go through those. So you've obviously got your 10 or more eligible objections, with 10 if the amendment carries. You've also got the definition of a major project. You've got the councillor's ability to call up the application. So, and you've also got whether the matter raises an issue of policy or process not
Councillor,
covered.
you've got 30 seconds.
Or it's impacted by conflicting policy. But the key part of this is around the councillor call-up, and if we're going to bring things up to council, in addition to what's in the guidelines, that there's a bit more rigour around that change. So I propose that that form be changed, that if a councillor wants to call something up, it brings forward the signatures of 2 additional councillors to ensure that that's
Councillor,
had
your
that
time is
sanity.
up. Would you
Thank
like an
Mayor.
extension
I'll just
for
briefly,
15
Mayor.
seconds?
Yeah, so when it comes up to council, it's had those second and third set of eyes that if we are going to delay a project that is outside of what is in the guidelines, then there's a good reason for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the item?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to, I think it's timely for us to review our planning delegation policy, and happy in general with the one that's been proposed, but I also appreciate the amendments put forward by Councillor Philburn, and obviously I'm supporting them. I think to acknowledge that when an application does come to council, it does blow out the timeframes considerably for the applicants, and that's something that's really difficult for people in planning matters to get stuff. There's already it's a very busy department with many applications, and those time delays can have a real impact for people who are trying to get things built in the community. So I think it's very appropriate for most of them to be delegated to the officers with the expertise. I was really keen to keep the objections at 10 at this point, given the kind of limited number of... there aren't too many applications that come to us based on reaching the objection threshold. We count eligible objections as being from separate households, so that would be 10 separate households who have a concern about a matter. Appreciate if that's still causing significant problems or a large volume of applications to come to us, it could be reconsidered, obviously depending on the circumstances, but planning, as well as it needing to be as efficient as possible, also is something that people in the community really care about. You know, what's happening around your home is very, very important to you, and I would hate to think of 10 separate households being really concerned about an issue and us not being notified as councillors, because that's part of what we're here to do, is look out for you and your interests and concerns. So yeah, I'm glad to keep that at 10 for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I support the motion with the amendments as suggested by Councillor Byrne. I think for me it balances increased efficiency but also community accountability. Whilst I agree with Councillor Byrne's suggestions that we should be focusing on strategy and absolutely wholeheartedly support that, I think it's important to recognise that the communities that vote for us also expect us to be their representative and be their voice in certain circumstances. We're not necessarily going to agree with them on everything, and that certainly happens from time to time, but I think it's important that they know that they can still have that voice, and that sometimes decisions will be made in the chamber. I agree that with the changes, I wholeheartedly support the eligible objections, maintaining the status quo at 10. I think that the removal of 4.1.2 point E makes sense. I think it's too subjective to have someone else making the decision on what's or having to make a decision on what's controversial or politically sensitive. I also think all the other points in the document will cover a lot of that anyway. Look, and also, if it blows out times too much, we always have the possibility as councils to schedule more meetings to make more planning decisions to deal with that as well. I know we have a schedule for the rest of the year, but there's nothing to stop us changing or adding to that this year if required, or in subsequent years if we find that that's a necessity and things are getting blown out too much. I just think it's incredibly important that we look at the planning guidelines now here, the delegation policy, as we are given changes to planning with activity centres and new state government policies, whilst also balancing our responsibility to those that vote for us and the people that live in Moonee Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Barnes, Councillor Philbin, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Jones, Councillor Sypek, and Councillor Adams. All those against? Oh, sorry, Councillor Theocharides. All those against? Councillor Samantha Byrne. I declare that motion carried. The next report is item 9.5, kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa?
I'd like to move a motion for the sake of debate, Mayor, to make sure it doesn't lapse.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And a seconder?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Cosgrove, you'll second the motion. Thank you. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Mayor, I'd like to ask when this motion comes to the vote, if you might be able to split the motion.
I'll consider that. Thank you,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Isa.
Look, and I'll speak to, first speak to the part of the motion that I support, which is point B, which is noting that council officers will continue to explore opportunities for the establishment of a kindergarten service in Moonee Ponds. So since 2016, councillors around the table, so that's now 3 different terms of councillors, have been trying to address a predicted and known shortfall of kindergarten places for our community in and around Moonee Ponds. And we haven't yet solved that problem. 9 years later, we're still trying to work out where we might be able to, or how we might be able to meet that demand and the projected demand. Point 2 of B.2 is to continue to advocate to the state government to help us fund acquisition of property to support the establishment of kindergarten services in Moonee Ponds. And as was mentioned earlier, we're so very grateful for the $20 million investment, the unprecedented investment from the current government, the current state Labor government, to expand our kindergarten service, and we are going to need to continue to work with and partner with the state government to continue to find property and ways to service the demand. And point B3, to provide updates to council if opportunities become available. In something that's possibly never been done before around this chamber, I'm going to speak against the motion that I've moved, which is point A and point C. I don't support the recommendations outlined in the confidential attachment 1, but unfortunately, because it's a confidential attachment, I'm not able to speak to it or give great detail as to why I don't support it. But I've hopefully outlined some of those concerns in briefings, and I'm happy to email officers with further advice on that. And point C, I don't think that we have met the intent or request from existing council resolutions, and I don't think that we're at the point where we can close those resolutions off yet.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Before I move on to Councillor Cosgrove to speak, I have considered your request to separate the motion. And so just so councillors have some notice, I will put the motion to the vote in 3 parts. So I will split the motion into 3 parts, A, B and C, to be considered separately. So we'll now go to Councillor Cosgrove to speak to the item.
Thanks, Mayor. So obviously it's an item with a great deal of history, a lot of which I haven't been around for, and I'm a bit worried. It feels as though some of the officer's recommendation is to kind of sum it up nicely and and close it, and I'm just not sure that I have enough information. Like, I feel like that's where we're at, and that's the appropriate step at the moment. So, similar to Councillor Isa, really, I very happy to support Part B to continue to explore the opportunities for the service in Moonee Ponds rather, and advocate to state government. We've had a really kind of fruitful, successful partnership in delivering the kinder services, which is a really kind of jewel in the crown for Moonee Valley. I think I'm very proud of it that we deliver those services as a council, and I know that the community really value having community childcare and kinder available. In saying that, we do have projected shortfalls still. I think the information provided was anticipating over 700 places, being 700 places short in 2029, which is 4 years away. And so I'm just a bit reticent to support the officer's recommendation in full because I'm not sure quite what we're going to do about that. So yeah, happy to vote on this in separate parts. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I am happy to support Part A. I can't say why because it's a confidential attachment. I am happy to support Part B for the reasons mentioned. I think it the opportunity for a kindergarten in Moonee Ponds is one that should continue to be explored, and absolutely, if it's going to be paid for and it requires the acquisition of property, the state government should be funding that, and so advocacy is important there. And also, obviously, continued updates to council as available. I struggle to support Part C for similar reasons as mentioned by Councillor Cosgrove. As a relatively new councillor, I'm not comfortable that the outstanding resolutions have been covered for me satisfactorily. So, yeah, I'm not sure I can support that part of the motion if it's going to be voted on separately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you. I will. In relation to Part A, which is endorse the recommendations as outlined in confidential attachment 1, on the public agenda, it was said that attachment 1 is considered confidential under the terms of section 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020 because it contains information relating to council business information being information that will prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, and C, land use planning information being information that if prematurely released is likely to encourage speculation in land values. The attachment details sites council has identified that may be of interest for future acquisition and their estimated property value. So that is why that is confidential for those that are listening at home and are curious. That bit that I read out obviously is the public part that I can read. So I'm not going to speak on that. In regards to point B, I think that it is incredibly important that we continue to explore opportunities for the establishment of kindergarten services in Moonee Ponds. It is one of our biggest, if not our biggest suburb, and we have lots of kids, and we don't have a sessional kinder, which quite honestly isn't good enough. And whilst we, can praise how good the kindergarten investment from the state government has been in particular areas around this municipality, it's obviously lacking here in Moonee Ponds, which is disappointing, and maybe in our advocacy strategy that I know that we'll be working on in the near future, it might be prioritised. Because I think from what I've heard and what I've heard around this chamber for a number of years now, a sessional kindergarten in Moonee Ponds is important to the local community. In regards to C, note that this report addresses all outstanding council resolutions relating to kindergarten in Moonee Ponds and resolves to close all related previous resolutions. I've had a reading of the wording, and I actually do agree with point C. It might be that the wording of the motions perhaps wasn't particularly explicit, but if you actually look at what they've asked for, I feel like this report does. And I haven't heard as to how they haven't. Like, I feel like we want another kinder, but I don't think that the motions as such are to say...
Councillor, you've got 30 seconds.
Thanks. But the motions that are being closed, it's not saying... I don't think it's to say, sort of go out and build one, or I think there was a motion last year that it was like try to open one by, it was a date that was somewhat unachievable, but obviously that date's passed. So I'm struggling to see how I don't support C. I think that this motion has ticked the boxes,
Councillor
but we are
Samantha.
still not delivering what the community wants and needs. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with these to be split up. I'm just on A. It's tangled up with B in a way that makes it a little bit difficult for me to support A. Consistent with colleagues around the table, would definitely love to see B charge ahead. I think that's really important work. And I'm always a bit funny on various motions and what's exactly in them and what's hiding. So a little bit unsure on C as well. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No, if not, I'll allow Councillor Isa to have right of reply.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just speak quickly to point C. The two motions that I don't think have been closed out are the motion of 14th of November 2023, Part A of which was to identify potential suitable locations for a council-operated kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. We obviously haven't done that yet. And point 3 of the motion of the 23rd of October 2018, which was to provide regular updates to council in relation to the matter being exploring suitable sites within the Moonee Ponds neighbourhood to accommodate early years. So they're motions that I think I'm not ready to say are closed off, because I think that's exactly what we need to keep doing, because, as was rightly pointed out, we do need to provide some kinder provision for members of the Moonee Ponds community.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillors, I will now split the vote. So we will consider Part A, which is endorse the recommendations outlined in confidential attachment 1. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Barnes, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Jones, Councillor Sypek. All those against? Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Adams, Councillor Theocharides. So I declare that part carried. Lost. Sorry. Now we'll consider Part B. Note that council officers will, 1, continue to explore opportunities for the establishment of a kindergarten service in Moonee Ponds. 2, continue to advocate to the state government to fund the acquisition of property to support the establishment of a kindergarten service in Moonee Ponds. And 3, provide updates to council if opportunities become available. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And Part C reads, note that this report addresses all the outstanding council resolutions relating to kindergarten in Moonee Ponds and resolves to close all related previous resolutions. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Barnes, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Sypek. All those against? That's Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Jones, Councillor Theocharides, Councillor Adams. I declare that part lost. Thank you, everyone. We will now move to the next report, which is item 9.6, endorsement of Racecourse Road Strategic Improvement Plan Advocacy Plan. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an additional point F that reads, request a report back at the first council meeting in 2026 or within 6 months of the Westgate Tunnel opening, whichever date happens first, comprising an update on advocacy and other council work.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove, thank you. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I've spoken about this plan I've spoken about the Racecourse Road Strategic Improvement Plan a number of times in the chamber. This particular element of it is the advocacy plan that starts to talk about how we're trying to make this plan happen, which is the most important part of the plan. But it's not an easy task, and it involves a lot of different moving pieces and a lot of different stakeholders. The improvement plan is really ambitious. It's about really transforming the corridor of Racecourse Road from being an unsafe sort of freeway for trucks and cars ignoring the 40 Ks and often colliding with the bridge and putting the trams down for the day, people getting on and off the tram feeling really unsafe. It's a very complicated and unsatisfactory corridor. The City of Melbourne and City of Moonee Valley have been working on this for a number of years, and we're in great debt to the work of the officers and councillors at the City of Melbourne who have brought considerable expertise to this, and we're very grateful for that. The plan sets out, this particular advocacy plan is all about the things that we need to be asking of the state government, because this is a Department of Transport Vic Roads road, because it involves trams, because it involves a railway bridge, it involves a lot of infrastructure that we don't have any control over. So the advocacy plan sets out a range of different mechanisms that we're going to be using in conjunction with City of Melbourne to bring this plan to life. It's challenging, it's not going to happen overnight. One of the key pieces that we're really waiting for is the Westgate tunnel project to open so that we understand how that alters the traffic flow. We're really hoping that it does take some of the heavy vehicles away from Racecourse Road, but until we actually see that in action, it's hypothetical. We're also waiting for the implementation of the new trams, which we're very excited about, but obviously that's something that's out of our control, and we just waiting to then see what that then allows us to do for tram stops and making tram stops accessible and safe. I really appreciate the communication that we've had from the Kensington Association around the safety issues and around making sure, really asking for two things, making sure that councils do what we can do without waiting for the Department of Transport and State Government, and so I really appreciate that and take that on board as something that you're expecting of City of Melbourne and City of Moonee Valley, the street tree planting, the beautification, the things that we can activate. The Kensington Association also asked for some clear lines of reporting back to the community, and I think that's a really important request. Look, for the importance of making sure that Moonee Valley works hand in hand and consistently with City of Melbourne, I haven't altered the motion to incorporate any further details in the motion, but that's not to say we don't take that request for reporting back really seriously, and really welcome the engagement from the community and the Kensington Association on this, and absolutely undertake to report back to you and the wider community as best we can. And this will take a long time. There will be a lot of reporting back. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isel. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation with the amendment. The Westgate project is the second river crossing for Victoria to take Melbourne to take pressure off the Westgate Bridge. It'd be very interesting to see what happens if there's a reduction in trucks, or if there's an increase in commuter traffic that now like Racecourse Road, because it's got fewer trucks. And look, I think and just to note that Racecourse Road is a lot of things. It's a gateway, it's a thoroughfare. It's somehow maintained its charm despite destruction of heritage decades ago and all sorts of things. And it's so very keen to see all of this work progress. So support the amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Filburn. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks, I will. And look, I'm unsure. I'm still unsure. I don't know which way I'm going to go with this still. My concern with these works is probably the first point. One of the prioritised people, and I understand that there is a big push for that around the inner city, but Racecourse Road, from where the ward that I represent in the municipality, we send a lot of cars down Racecourse Road. It says here in the papers that it carries over 30,000 motor vehicles per day. And my understanding from what I can read from this advocacy is that we want to prioritise people over the motor vehicles. And I think that this is brilliant for the City of Melbourne because they obviously don't want more cars coming into the city. But at the moment, people that I represent don't really have that many other... we don't have a train station in Airport West yet, so we don't have the best of options. Like, okay, sure, we've got the Craigieburn line and we can make it really, but it's incredibly difficult to not drive down Racecourse Road to get into the city. So, does that mean that I don't support this massive piece of work? I'm not sure, but I definitely have concerns because what is already a bottleneck is only going to be more of a bottleneck, and does that actually place people who live on the other side of the bottleneck at a significant disadvantage? And I think that I think it does. There are lots of things in the plan that I do agree with. I like the idea that we want to encourage public transport, but I feel like we've got to, and there's parts of that in the plan, but I feel like we've got to nail that in other areas before we necessarily completely just ask for, we're going to make it so difficult for the cars. It's a bit of, for me, it is a little bit of chicken and egg sort of stuff. And so I'm not sure which way I am going to vote on this, but I think there are, I definitely have concerns with some of the things that we're supposedly advocating for. So.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Isa, would you like a right of reply?
So we all represent the whole municipality, and that means that we represent the people who are currently using Racecourse Road for shopping, for tram use, for cycling, for train use, and currently doing it in really unsafe circumstances. There have been a number of fatalities over the years in the area, and near misses, and significant number of accidents. The Racecourse Road plan responds appropriately to the driver which is across the whole municipality, which is trying to make sure that people use public transport and sustainable transport wherever they can, because we just cannot sustain congestion on the road and increased congestion, not just for climate, but for people's safety. And we've got a number of plans and strategies, not to mention the integrated transport plan that we're looking at soon, that make it clear that our municipality identifies sustainable transport, active transport and people as the priority for the users of our network. And this plan is entirely consistent with that. And those priorities cover the whole municipality and cover all of the people which we're all responsible for.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I will now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Filburn, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Jones, Councillor Adams, Councillor Theocharides. All those against? Councillor Barnes, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Sypek. I declare that motion carried. We'll now move to the next report, which is item 9.7, extension of contract number 20/215 for concrete maintenance services. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Mayor.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Thank you. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, you can probably hear that I've actually seemed to be starting to lose my voice a little, Mayor, so I moved the motion because it didn't seem as though other hands were going up, but I probably will struggle to speak to it at this point. It's an extension of a contract that served us well. It's always, a bit nervous when we look at these big figures, but I'm confident in the work that's been done behind the scenes on this particular contract.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'll just add a few things. So it's the extension of the concrete maintenance contract, as Councillor Isa said, it's for a fourth and final year. That's right. It's for a final year. It's a 1 year extension. And so it is quite, as a new councillor, it's quite, I don't know, walking how expensive concrete is, but essential. It covers our 400 kilometres of curbs and channels. I think there's over 800 kilometres of 400 kilometres of road and 800 kilometres of pathways and footpaths. Like, there's just a lot of. It's the essential connection between, around the municipality, between the community, and it costs more than I would have thought, but very happy to make sure that we continue to keep it at a safe level. It obviously gets the most wear and tear, and so needs to be renewed. So happy to support this extension, and look forward to seeing the new tenders next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation. Council has approximately 885 kilometres of pathways and 400 kilometres of curbs and channels. Council undertakes an average of 3,500 defect repairs annually. So I think that obviously having concrete maintenance contracts in place is important. As the report states, officers have benchmarked these pricing against other councillors and similar projects, so I think it represents value for money. As much as I don't like spending money, we have to spend money, and the community expects us to fix footpaths, curbs and channels, so I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.8, endorsement of Procurement Australia contract 2706/0848 for library collections, furniture, equipment and associated requirements. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I will. The libraries in our municipality are probably one of our most popular services. They do a wonderful job, our library, and it's probably a good time to touch on the fact that the Ascot Vale Library is reopening soon, so that is incredibly exciting. But one thing that we need in our libraries is obviously books and magazines and whatnot and everything else. And what this... sorry, I've just lost my page. What we basically need to go out to do is we're endorsing the Procurement Australia contract for library collections, furniture, equipment and associated requirements. Some of the things that came out under the procurement categories were printed materials, printed magazines and newspapers, digital collections, audio-visual materials, full shelf-ready services, and whatnot. And I am limited to what I can say because there's obviously some confidential parts in this report as well. It is for an initial 2-year contract, just under $2.5 million, and then an option to extend for a further 2 1-year periods for a similar price. We need to be funding our libraries and ensuring we're keeping up to date with the items that people want in them, so that our service remains to be, I'm probably biased, but one of the best in the state. And so very happy to support us to do this. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was an easy motion for me to support. As Councillor Byrne mentioned, our libraries are our highest rated service in Moonee Valley. They have massive levels of customer satisfaction. There's 40%, over 40% of our residents are library members, and there were 450,000 visits to the library and 830,000 physical and digital items loaned in the 24-25 financial year. So it's obviously a very heavily used area of our municipality. This is a continuation of service with Procurement Australia, and as the report sort of outlines, it gives us access to high quality materials and a cost savings through access to the panel arrangement. I will also note that whilst the report mentions anticipated expenditure of $2.4 million for the initial 2-year contract, we're not actually obliged to spend $2.4 million. So depending on where things end up, we may end up spending less than that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing much to add other than obviously the tender process is you resolve that the provider's it's a compliant, efficient, most fit for purpose and the best value. And also just picking up through on the officer's report that the library service has the highest satisfaction rating from the customer feedback. And as Councillor Byrne mentioned, 10 o'clock Monday, that rating might even go a bit higher when people start to flow through the Ascot Vale Library and see some of the good work there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Ivor.
I'd like to, I'm struggling to, but I just want to point out that the report does mention that every dollar invested, there's a $6.40 return. So I think the comment was made with respect to perhaps not spending all the money. I hope we do spend all the money because it's certainly a good investment. There's a list on page 77 of all the different types of materials that we provide in our libraries. 40% of the municipality apparently members of our libraries. If you're one of the 60% who are not, don't miss out on the fun. There's lots there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.9, Audit and Risk Committee minutes of 16th June 2025 meeting and biannual report. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Councillor Philburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Jones, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I will just briefly, as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, I just thought I'd reinforce the role of the Audit and Risk Committee. So it's providing oversight of financial management and risk for the council. It has 3 council members on it and a number of independent members. And as a committee member, I value the process of the Audit and Risk Committee for maintaining this community confidence, both through regularly reporting on the minutes of meetings, but also the biannual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Councillors, item 10 on the agenda is notices of motion, and we have none listed on tonight's agenda, so we'll move on to item 11, urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? If not, we will move on to item 12, confidential items. We have one confidential item listed on the agenda this evening, the motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the confidential item 12.1 MV/299/2024 at 51 and 53 to 55 Keilor Road, Essendon is displayed on the screen. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anybody like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. This is where we say goodnight to those watching the meeting via live stream and to those in the chamber at 9:06 p.m. The next council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 26th of August 2025. Good night.